Welcome everyone to this webinar for Estrella Resources, ASX code ESR. Shortly, I will introduce Non-Executive Chairman Mr Les Pereira, who will provide an update on the company's activities at the emerging Spargoville nickel project in WA, which is rapidly approaching the production phase. The presentation will also discuss Estrella's ongoing exploration activities at the highly prospective Carr Boyd nickel project, where the company has encountered massive nickel sulphides along a 75 square kilometre mafic igneous complex. Following the presentation, attendees will have the opportunity to ask questions of Les during a Q&A session. So as the presentation is occurring, think about the questions you would like asked and submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll put them to Les during the Q&A section. Okay. Let's get started. I would now like to introduce Estrella Resources Non-Executive Chairman, Mr. Les Pereira, who will give you the formal presentation. Les, over to you.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much. And thanks, shareholders, for taking the time to listen to what we have to say. Estrella is a company based in WA. We've got two projects. If we want to move through to the first slide, one is Spargoville, and the other one is the Carr Boyd rocks. Now, Spargoville was a group of mining concessions, which we've acquired a while ago when the nickel price was low. And there's four ore bodies which we're looking at. It's around about 80 kilometres south of Kalgoorlie, and it's close to infrastructure, roads, everything in the area is needed. Spargoville is what we're concentrating at the moment. We have been working on a DFS, which I think everyone knows about. The DFS is very close to completion. I know it's taken longer than what we all expected, but as down the track, you'll find out that when we made the decision to go underground, and the reason we've made that decision to go underground was because once we'd done the slot cutout, we'd worked out that the ground conditions would satisfy an underground operation, but also when you're doing an open pit, we had to encroach onto the neighbour's border, and the neighbour made it economically unviable for us to go down that pathway. So it wasn't attractive enough. And then once we've actually started looking at it, our project, at the project as an underground operation, we've come to think that it's actually probably the better way of going. The Carr Boyd nickel sulphide project, which is north of Kalgoorlie, is a massive project, which I'll see later on the slide when you compare it to the area of Kalgoorlie and Boulder. It is a highly prospective nickel sulphide project, but it contains the Carr Boyd nickel mine, which has been previously mined. So we knew there was nickel there. Around about 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, we discovered the T5 project, T5 area, which was what significantly rose our share price about 2 years ago. Next slide, please. Now, Spargoville, we'll get back to the Spargoville. It consists of, as I said, 4 concessions. You've got your 5A, the Andrews mine, 5B and 1A. We bought them off for WA Nickel back in about 2017, and we bought them very cheaply. They've been previously mined, and there is a lot of remnant nickel sulphide mineralisation, which we intend to actually access now when the nickel price is high, and there is also extensive exploration potential at depth. So as we go, like the previous operators had mined certain areas of it, but we know that there's a lot more nickel around that area, and with the nickel price where it is right now, it becomes a very attractive proposal to move forward. The reason why we've actually decided to go and mine Spargoville is because that potential cash flow from that region will actually allow us to go and develop and do more continuation of exploration of Carr Boyd and also the Spargoville deeper areas. Next slide, please. So where we're at the moment is the 5A nickel deposit. Now, our DFS, which has been taking a while, is very well advanced. We've just currently delivered just over 2,500 or just under 2,500 tonne of 5A ore delivered to the Murrin HPAL plant. The results which we got, the information we got back from Murray and Glencore last week was basically said that the ore satisfied all their requirements and they were very happy with it. So that's just ticked another box off for us to go into our 5A development project, and also helps us complete the DFS. So next stage is we're looking at how we're going to do it. And as we've all just seen recently, we've been looking at the underground operation. The underground operation we're originally looking at the open pit, but as I said previously, was that the next door neighbour made it difficult. Plus also the size of the pit, we could only go down to that bottom area of 80 metres. Once we got there, we'd have to open up the pit, and we're also mining a lot of waste material. The actual mining of the operation is probably better underground because we can control I've lost the word now for it. We can control our concentration, so our grade, the grade. And we can actually control our grade, which makes it a lot more beneficial for when we're selling our ore to Murray. The underground operation also will allow us to put an underground drill pad in, which will allow us to further test the deeper extensions of the project, which we know that is ore down there. We've just got to further test it. And then if it's an underground operation, we continue to go down further as we go. Next slide, please. Once again, we are very happy with the way our definitive feasibility study is going. We are at the stage now, we have got talks with the mining contractors. They are putting in their final quotes so that we can actually make a decision subject to the nickel price, which is important because at the moment it is a feasible project. But if it goes down much lower, you start looking at, are we going to be pulling out ore and selling it for less than what it's costing us to get it out of the ground? We believe the nickel price is going to continue to move on an upward trend. If you look at the long-term graph, it is continuing going in an upward trend. There's always going to be ups and downs. Around about 3 or 4 months ago, we're up at $28,000 US per tonne. Now it's down to $21 US, $21,000 US per tonne. So there is ups and downs as you go, but in the general overall trend, it's in an upward motion. The main reason for that is that you're in an area of critical metals, which is very important for the EV market. And we are making sure that we are going to tap into that as we develop these projects. Next slide, please. As I said, the other potential near-term production assets at Spargoville include the 5B deposit, which is quite close. Now, one of the underground operations or the developments that we were looking at can potentially join the 5A and 5B deposit together. This is an interesting proposal which has been put forward to one of them by one of the mining contractors, and there is a significant, and we'll be basically accessing that a lot quicker than what we do if we start to develop that on its own. The 5D deposit is another project which has had considerable amount of nickel taken out already, and it's a good potential cash flow in the near term. And eventually you got the 1A deposit, which lies about 4.5 kilometres north of the 5AB and D deposits. Next slide, please. As you see, the reason why we're in the nickel industry is because with the EV market, and you've got all the governments in the world talking about everything's got to go electricity, the cars have got to have things. Nickel is one of the main metals which is used in the battery markets. Our nickel at Spargoville is a nickel sulphide concentrate. It can be transferred into a purified nickel, which goes into form the cathodes and the batteries. It's just one of the minerals which we believe in the future, with copper, with manganese and lithium, which is just running out of, it's just not going to be enough for it there, considering what the governments are saying they require for all the world's battery markets and requirements. We're looking at other projects as well. which are in that thing. So anything which is in that critical metal market, we are constantly analysing as we're going along. Next slide, please. Now, the Carr Boyd project. Now, this is the main project exploration play which we have been working on for the last 2 years. It's a massive project, and I'll show you a little bit later on when you compare the size of it to Kalgoorlie and Boulder area. It's huge. When we first got there, we actually had the Carr Boyd mine, so we knew there was nickel in the area. There's been a lot of work done on it. We're fortunate enough to have Steve Warriner, who has taken a very scientific approach. He's brought in CSIRO. I'm not sure whether anyone's actually seen the actual CSIRO paper which has been put out. There was an announcement out, I think, on Monday regarding this. It's worth having a read because when you actually, it's very technical, but when you actually read the information on it, we are in the right area. It's just a case of whether you can find it. The tenements cover a massive area. It's produced nickel. We own it 100%. And over the last 2 years, we've developed a very good understanding of how the actual ore body is occurring, how where our highly prospective targets is. And over the last 6 months, since we've stopped drilling and we've been working on it, working with CSIRO, we've come up with a list of targets now, which I think there's around about 20 targets on there, which are very, very exciting. The future, as we drill that up, it's just a case of we've just got to keep drilling it because we know that there's nickel there. We know that it's a large area. When we find it, we're hoping to find an actual economic ore body. The exploration, which we've done, as I said, when I first come into this company about 3 years ago, we had nothing other than the tenements. We got, and we were in a situation similar to what we are right now. We were trading at about 1 cent. We raised $1.4 million at that price. We went and drilled 2 holes. We then hit, on the second hole, we hit hole 30. That sent the market crazy. I look at our project, our company now, and we're back at 1 cent, and we've got a situation where we have so much more knowledge of the area. We've also got development projects occurring which are very close to making a decision whether to go into production. And I'm looking at it thinking, wow, the market is a crazy thing. Next slide, please. As I said, I just thought I'd put this slide in just to show you the size of our project compared to Kalgoorlie Boulder. And if you look right to the middle of the area, you'll see that black area, that's the super pit. So our concessional area, which the whole, everywhere we've drilled so far, we are hitting nickel sulphides, whether it's in cloudy sulphides, semi-massive sulphides or massive sulphides. We are getting sulphides, and we are only just testing the contact wall, which is an area of basically a small area compared to the whole region. The actual of interest is the Carr Boyd mine is actually away from the contact, which is just an interesting understanding of the actual whole area. Even CSIRO said that is a different melt compared to the T5 melt, and they believe that there's going to be numerous melts in the area. So we could be sitting on numerous ore bodies in the region. We just got to spend the money and look into finding it. Next slide, please. The Carr Boyd exploration target, as you probably all know, we put out our resource estimate, and that was just on the T5 region with an exploration target basing on that small area of region which we've looked at. Now, if you actually look at that picture on the right, you can see that there is a massive region that we haven't even touched yet. And we've just got to keep on hitting drilling holes into the right areas to get the information which then directs you towards the actual mineralized areas. Next slide, please. We know it's got nickel. When we've been discussing this with CSIRO, and we've also done a lot of studies on the region. We know that there are areas which have been identified which are going to have potential massive sulphides. I remember one of the guys talking to me about how to understand it. And this area is basically, if you want to put it in a very simple term, it's like a riverbed. And as the riverbed is where the lava is running along, and you'll get these areas where there'll be deposition of the nickel sulphides into little potholes. And those potholes are the things which we're looking for in the riverbed. So first of all, we had to find out which way the river was flowing, which way the river was sitting, because this whole structure, and this was the thing I found very, very hard to understand, the whole structure was turned up and rotated around and twisted around. So we had to understand, which we've done through our drilling and done through our seismics, and we've got that information. We're slowly coming together and we're getting a better understanding of the Carr Boyd project. Now, that just makes it more exciting for me. And I sit there and people sit and go, oh, you're not finding the massive sulphides, you're not finding this, but every hole which we're drilling is giving us information which is allowing us to understand the area better. And the more understanding we have, we apply the science to it. And it's the one thing I do like about what we've done so far. It's a very scientific project. It mightn't be the wildcat drilling holes and finding, X number of millions of tons of ore. But as we get the information together, we're going to have a better understanding of where that ore body is. And when we do hit the area, that's going to make it a lot easier for developing the project. Next slide, please. As I said, this is the new development exploration targets which we've generated. After sitting down with CSIRO, as you can see, initially it started off just on the contact, which you can see where that T5 circle and the red line, that was the region which we were concentrating on. So we were looking at those riverbed areas, but the Carr Boyd mine, which sits off the riverbed, is in the middle. And then we've actually identified areas with PGEs in there. We've identified areas which now look like very highly prospective regions off the target, off the contact, which is where that purple line is, where it's got number 4. This is one region which has never been explored before, but from all the information we've gathered and the data which we've gathered over the last couple of years, it's now about another 16 kilometres of target, which is a high priority exploration target, which CSIRO believe is very prospective. And you've also got the areas in the middle as well, which we can start delineating and looking at. So as you can see, the exploration for Carr Boyd there is a fair bit there going on, and we understand that's something which is a priority for the company, and we want to make sure that we can actually test this and get the best possible results for our shareholders. Next slide, please. As you've seen, a lot of people are talking about, we're in a very tight cash position. And as I mentioned just previously, back when I started at the company 3 years ago, I think we had just over $100,000 in the bank. We raised 1.4, we drilled the hole, which sent us through the roof. And at that time, I think we are in a better position now than we were then. We've just received back to now enable us to finish off our DFS. We've received back just over $1 million under our research R&D refund grant, which we'll be implementing that to make sure that we finish off the DFS, and if positive, send us into the situation where we can make a decision to mine. We understand, as I'm a shareholder of the company as well, I don't want to issue more capital at these prices. It's crazy. That is the last area which we're looking at fundraising at the moment. Next slide, please. Okay, if you just keep going through the slides, there's one talking about the stockpiles. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. This one. This is the interesting graph which we've taken out of the nickel warehouse, and this is why the board of the company believes that the nickel price is in an upward trend, not a downward trend. We've got a situation where the actual stockpile at the warehouse is at the lowest ever levels. And you've got a situation where the government is making overtures to all the people in the world that you've got to get into an electric vehicle. You've got to have electric batteries on your walls to make sure you can sustain the power shortages which are developing. So we know that nickel is a critical metal which is required for that. We are making sure that we're in the right position with a development project which can produce nickel, which we can sell into a market which we believe is going to be in an upward trend. Thank you very much. Any questions now?
Thanks, Les. Yep, we've got a stack of questions, not unsurprisingly. The first one, and you touched on it a second ago, and there are a lot of questions here around funding. Yep. What is the plan to fund moving forward? You mentioned that a traditional cap raising sits very, very low on your agenda. How do you intend to fund the activities going forward?
Okay, so we've got a situation where we've got the Spargoville project, which will produce significant cash flow, which we can utilise to fund. But then you've got to actually start that project up. So there are different mechanisms available. You can look at the debt facilities. There are other facilities which you can potentially use, which are less dilutionary and they don't require any issuing of stock. That's the last scenario on the area at this stage is to issue debt, issue equity. We just believe that the projects are stacking up so nicely that we can go to a debt provider who can sit there and say, okay, we want to borrow this amount of money. This is how much it generates. Here's our feasibility, and we think that will actually suffice, and then actually enable us to generate some cash to be able to go into developing 5B and also putting money into the exploration drilling at Carr Boyd. Plus, also with drilling at Carr Boyd, people sit there and say, oh, over the years you've spent a fair bit of money. I'm actually very proud of the company. In the last 6 months, in the last half yearly, 82% of the money came into the actual business was spent in the ground. We've spent a lot of money in drilling, and we didn't get the massive hits that everyone demands on in a marketplace like the share, like in where our shares are. But we did get a lot of information. Every hole that we drilled gave us information which is going to lead us further into the project and give us a better understanding where the potential ore body is going to develop. And during that, we've actually been putting that information out. We've been approached by a couple of relatively significant parties who are potentially looking at joint venturing with us. And we are in discussions with them at the moment just to get an understanding of what they believe is good and what we believe is good for us and our shareholders. So, as I said, at this stage, an equity raise is very low on our list of probabilities.
I'll park the last bit of that conversation for a second because we do have a lot of questions around the DFS, and I know you did touch on it in the presentation. What do you think the timing looks like to completion? It's a key study because it then, as you say, gives you the opportunity to talk to financing partners and also then gives some clarity around potential revenue to the company that can be used in other areas. So what's the DFS timing look like?
DFS is imminent. One of the final things was the delivery of ore to Glencore. We had to make sure we could actually sell it. And the Glencore have come back with us in the last couple of weeks. I think it was end of last week, and basically said it satisfied all their requirements, and we're happy with what we provided with them. So that we've got a situation where we've got a place which we can potentially deliver our ore to. They are happy with the qualities, and that is exactly what we expected it to be. In regard to now, we've got to start looking at the actual costing of the mine, and that's fairly developed at this stage. We've been doing that over the last a couple of months while we've been working as getting the understanding of that we were going to do an underground operation. One of the reasons we were a bit delayed was we were originally only looking at an open pit design. And the main reason that we're looking at open pit design is because we don't know enough about the ground quality in the area, and also it is a simpler project, but some of the downfalls of the open pit was you don't have grade control. You have to have a pit, if you want to say it's like a boundary, and that actually went over into our neighbour's boundary. And after discussions for a couple of months with them, they basically, it was a hard one that we couldn't have come to an agreement which would have been economical. We didn't believe it was fair and reasonable on their behalf. So when we developed took out the slot, we come to realise that the ground quality was good enough for an underground operation. We then spoke to some of the underground mining operators, and basically they said, look, this is crazy. You can actually get greater ground control, plus also you can access your deeper ore, because by putting the inclines down, you're already halfway down, and you can drill, which is going to be a cheaper drilling program than if we're drilling from the top of the surface, because you're already down 120 metres, and you can actually access drilling program, which is going to be cheaper, and potentially if the ore's there, we can actually just further extend that incline to actually access the ore quicker. So there was a lot of positives on the DFS, and that's made us we're at a situation now where the DFS, and we're just waiting on the final costings from the mining contractors and just seeing whether they stack up with the nickel price and the permitting, the government permitting which is required, and then we'll make the decision whether we're going ahead or not.
Okay, so some good clarity there on the DFS. Now, you touched on a second ago or a little while ago, a potential funding scenario could involve a joint venture partner. Now, keeping in mind there's nothing disclosed to the market, and there's no commercial terms yet to discuss, but how likely or how active do you think a joint venture opportunity could be for the company, keeping in mind, like I said, there is no commercial terms, nothing's been disclosed, but is a joint venture a realistic opportunity for the company, particularly at Carr Boyd?
It's definitely an opportunity we've got an unbelievable project at Carr Boyd, and it's just such a big project, and the potential of something massive hiding in that region is very high. So for a group on the outside that are looking at, and there are a lot of people which would be looking at our announcements, looking at our data, which would be looking at going, okay, well, and it's like anything. They would prefer to see us take most of the risks, which is where we're at. We've been taking the risks. Now we're sitting, we've actually got some very credible data. We've got the backing of CSIRO, which are basically saying, guys, keep drilling. You've just got to keep on working out where this is going, how the whole model is developing. And our model is developing each hole we're drilling. And it's de-risking it every time we drill a hole. So you've got people out there looking at that, and they're saying, well, somewhere along the line, we're going to have a look at, if we want to get into nickel, and if it ends up being a massive project, then this is a very good opportunity for them to come in and help us in these early stages. And there are people that have been talking to us and constantly, over the last 2 years, we've had different conversations. But these are people that are contacting us, not we're contacting them at these stages. So we are in a fortunate situation that we actually do have interest in that region.
Now, in terms of Carr Boyd, what's the plans there? Drilling soon? As you said, every time you put a hole down, you're learning more, and it's giving you a greater understanding of the size of the potential and where to vector in on. What's the plans regarding drilling at Carr Boyd? Plans
drilling at Carr Boyd at the moment is if we get a party which we can work with and is beneficial for both of us, we would start drilling there and basically immediately. If not, we would then look at, as we bring cash flow from Spargoville, we would look at starting that. And Spargoville is actually quite a small operation, but a very quick operation as well. We're looking at, once we start, 6 to 9 months for 5A to be mined, and you get significant cash flow out of that if the nickel price stays where it is or goes higher. So that would actually enable us to start getting into the drilling at Carr Boyd as well. And there are other things which we're looking at. As I said, you've got the joint venture. There are other methods which we may be able to look at of funding that drilling program as well.
Now, you mentioned right towards the beginning, you're a shareholder, a significant shareholder in the company. So it would be remiss of me, with the significant number of shareholders watching the webinar, to not talk about the share price and your views on it. Firstly, your view on the share price, but also what are the catalysts that are going to see the rapid growth in the share price over the coming months? Okay.
First of all, I'm a director of the company. The company, every director is going to think the share price is undervalued. In this case, I think it's absolutely ridiculously undervalued. Unfortunately, myself, I actually put in a whole heap of money at the 5 cent mark last year. Harry hindsight, I wished I'd actually held off that money and put it in now, because I would have got 5 times the number of shares. So I've definitely watched the price come down, and it's disappointing. When I first got into the company, the share price was trading at around about 1 cent. We did a capital raise of 0.7, and then you go and look at history, and our stock price jumped up to 24 cents. At 24 cents, we were all looking at it going, wow, this is amazing. And we had looked at the assays and we thought this is going to 35, 40, and it just didn't. So you can't predict what share price is going to do. And when we raised that $11 million at 5 cents through Regal Fund Management, that was a great thing for the company. It just, unfortunately, they took a different view on what they wanted to see, and that has put a downward pressure on the share price. The markets have put a downward price on the share price, but at the end of the day, I think we've just got to start producing some results. I do think the share price is crazy cheap at the moment. Unfortunately, I'm not a rich man. I wished I could, because I would be buying some. I know I bought a very small amount in my super fund just recently, and I caught a whole stack of comments about why would I even waste my time. It's because that money I just believe was going to sit in a bank or sit here. I think here is a better thing than the bank. I think that what's going to drive our share price is if we can actually start hitting some targets, with the DFS being completed in the very short imminent time, and then potentially talking about funding, and then potentially talking about commencing a drill program at Carr Boyd. I think it's just crazy we're sitting where we are. Like everyone had bought shares at 0.7 when just before we hit the first hole, which was only 3.5 meters of massive sulphides, was laughing the whole time. And our company's in so much stronger position financially, and also with the understanding of Carr Boyd now, we are so much more developed, and our share price is back where we were. So it's a high risk. Estrella is a junior explorer. It is high risk, but there's also high reward. And if we start getting some results through from Spargoville, where we start, developing, and we're actually producing cash flow, so we don't have to go back to the equity market all the time, and then we can start funding Carr Boyd. And if we do find a joint venture for Carr Boyd, and we can get them on a commercially terms which are fair and reasonable for both parties, then hey, there's nothing really stopping us taking off again.
One question here regarding the options that are out. Do you expect them to be in the money before expiry?
I would like to. I hold a fair few of them. I would like to. At the end of the day, I just think that if we can, and we, as I said, we are fairly advanced with our DFS. So if we come out with our DFS in the next 3 or 4 weeks, which is positive, and I think that would be a big kicker. I think if we ended up coming out with, and I think the biggest problem is everyone thinks, oh, how are they going to fund the development of the mine? I think once we put the DFS together and we present that to debt providers, I think you'll find it'll be a pretty simple and once again, I have an understanding of what they require, and I think it'd be a pretty simple process for them to say, well, yeah, these guys can pay that back really easy. Yeah, we'll provide the debt. And I think once that we've taken off the fact that there is no capital raise coming in the near future, and that we've actually got the funding to develop the project, and then we'll have cash flow from the project to actually go on to further exploration at one of the other Spargoville projects, but also go into the exploration program at Carr Boyd. I think you'll find that that will be the kicker to get those options in the money. So I know we've only got 8 weeks, 9 weeks to go, but we are fairly advanced with what we're doing. So it's going to be a timing thing.
Always comes down to timing in exploration and resource companies. So that puts a neat bow around the questions. We've gone through all the questions that have come through. There's a couple of minor ones there that we'll deal with offline that I think we've covered, but I just we'll deal with them offline. If not, we've thrown a couple of hard ones at you. So the shareholders clearly are interested in particularly the definitive feasibility study, your plans to fund the development at Spargoville, and also when you're getting back drilling. So there's a couple of things to keep an eye on. Clearly a company to watch, high risk, high reward, as you say. Make your own investment decisions before going out and buying stock. But Les, a great presentation. You've answered all the questions. You didn't hide from any, so we appreciate that. Thank you everyone for participating and watching today's webinar. Les, thanks for your presentation and answering the questions as they came in. And thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Yep.